The laugh hit me harder than I expected. We were all sitting in the crowded hospital waiting room, bright white lights, the smell of antiseptic, the low buzz of a TV no one was watching. I pulled out my old phone to check the time. The cracked screen flickered like it always did. My grandson snorted. "Grandpa, is that thing from a museum?" he said, loud enough for people nearby to hear. A few heads turned. I felt my ears burn. He leaned closer, eyes full of mockery. "Seriously, who still uses a brick like that? You can't even afford a real phone?" Then he laughed again and added the line that cut deepest. "Guess being old means being broke, too." The room went quiet. Not polite quiet, awkward quiet. Chairs creaked, someone coughed. My daughter stared at the floor. I kept my eyes on the phone in my hand, my thumb resting over a message I hadn't opened in years. Before I could say anything, a man in a dark suit across the room stood up. He looked important, calm, the kind of person people naturally make space for. He walked straight toward us. "Excuse me," he said, his voice firm but respectful. "Sir, is that your phone?" I nodded, confused. He smiled slightly. I was hoping it was. Then he turned to my grandson. "Do you know whose number that's saved under emergency only?" My grandson shrugged, suddenly unsure. "No, why?" The man pulled out his own phone and showed the screen. "Because that number belongs to the person who saved my life 15 years ago." The room changed instantly. People leaned in. The nurse at the desk froze mid-typing. My daughter's head snapped up. My grandson's face drained of color. What do you mean?" The man looked at me now, eyes full of something close to respect. "This man," he said loudly, "paid for my surgery when no one else would. He told the hospital to never tell me his name." My grandson stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. I felt my grip tighten around the old phone, around the message I'd never opened, the one that arrived every year on the same date. The man stepped back and said softly, "Sir, the board is waiting for you upstairs." Bored. My grandson swallowed hard. That's when the phone vibrated in my hand. A new message appeared on the cracked screen. Same sender as always. And that's when I realized the secret I'd been hiding all these years was finally about to come out. But to understand why that message mattered, we need to go back to 2009. If this story touched you even a little, please subscribe to the channel, because what happened next changed my family forever and begins where everything almost broke me. Back in 2009. In 2009, I wasn't grandpa. I was just a tired man sitting on a plastic chair outside a government hospital, counting coins in my palm. The fan above me squeaked with every turn. Sweat ran down my back, but I didn't move. If I stood up, I might lose my place in line and my courage. Inside the emergency ward, a young man I didn't know was fighting for his life. I had overheard the doctor earlier whisper to a nurse, "He needs surgery tonight. No family, no payment. We can't delay much longer." I wasn't rich, I wasn't powerful, and I definitely wasn't important. But I knew one thing. I had money saved at home, money meant for something else, something personal, something I had promised myself I'd never touch. I walked up to the counter anyway. My voice shook when I spoke. "How much for the surgery?" The clerk looked surprised. "For him? Are you family?" I shook my head. "No." She hesitated. "Then why would you pay?" I didn't answer. I just handed over the envelope. That night, I left the hospital quietly. I didn't give my name. I didn't wait for thanks. I went home on the last bus, holding that same old phone in my hand. A few days later, a message arrived from an unknown number. It said only this: "I don't know who you are, but I'm alive because of you." I never replied. I saved the number under emergency only, and I never told anyone about it. Not my daughter, not my friends, and certainly not my grandson. because some good deeds aren't meant to be explained. But years later, in that hospital waiting room, that secret was about to collide with the present. My grandson didn't laugh anymore. He sat there stiff, his shoulders tense, eyes locked on the old phone in my hand like it might explode. The message was still glowing on the cracked screen, unread. The room felt smaller now. He finally broke the silence. "Grandpa?" His voice dropped. "What message?" I didn't answer right away. The man in the suit had already walked toward the elevator, but not before giving me a small nod, one full of respect. Everyone in that waiting room had seen it. The nurses, the patients, my daughter, especially my grandson. He leaned closer to me, his tone no longer mocking. "Why does someone like him know you?" I looked at my hands, old hands, hands that had done quiet things no one ever clapped for. "Some stories," I said softly, "aren't meant to be told early." That's when my daughter spoke, her voice trembling. "Dad, what have you been hiding from us?" The question hung heavy in the air. I finally unlocked the phone. The inbox opened slowly, lagging like it always did. Dozens of messages appeared, from the same number, all dated once a year, same day, same time. My grandson's eyes widened. You never reply to any of them?" I shook my head. I didn't need to. I opened the oldest message, the one from 2009. His breathing stopped when he read it. "I don't know who you are, but because of you, I get to see tomorrow." The room was silence again, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was heavy. My grandson swallowed hard. "Why wouldn't you tell us?" I looked up at him. "Would it have changed how you treated me?" That's when he couldn't meet my eyes. A nurse walked over and said, "Sir, they're ready for you upstairs." My grandson stood up quickly. "Upstairs? Why would they need you?" I slowly rose from the chair, my knees aching, my back stiff. "For the same reason they called him," I said. His voice cracked. "Grandpa, who are you?" I paused at the elevator doors and looked back at him. Just someone who kept his promises. The doors slid shut, and behind me, my grandson finally understood that the old phone wasn't a sign of weakness. It was proof of a life he never knew. The elevator doors closed softly behind me. For a moment, it was just my reflection in the metal walls, an old man with a tired face and an even older phone in his hand. The numbers climbed slowly. Each floor felt heavier than the last. When the doors opened, the hallway was quiet, carpeted, clean, nothing like the chaos downstairs. A woman in a blazer was waiting. "Sir, they're ready for you." She opened the door. Inside, a long table stretched across the room. Men and women in suits sat around it, important faces, serious expressions, the kind of people my grandson would have stood up straight for. The man from the waiting room was already there. He stood the moment he saw me. "Everyone," he said, clear and steady, "this is the man I told you about." Every head turned toward me. I felt my heart pound, but my voice stayed calm. "Please," I said, "sit. I'm not comfortable with this." They did. One of them spoke carefully. "Sir, we've been trying to find you for years." I shook my head. I asked not to be found. The man smiled faintly. "You asked the hospital to hide your name, but not your influence." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents, numbers, projects, scholarships, medical funds. "You built this?" I asked. He nodded. "You started it. That night in 2009. We just followed your example." My throat tightened. Another board member said, "We want to honor you. Publicly." I closed the folder gently. No ceremonies, no speeches. They exchanged looks. "Then why did you come today?" the man asked. I took out my old phone and placed it on the table. "Because my grandson thinks this phone means I failed in life," I said quietly, "and I need to go back downstairs and face him." The room fell silent. The man stood again. Then let us walk with you. Back in the elevator, none of us spoke. When the doors opened to the waiting room, every eye turned. My grandson was standing. His eyes filled the moment he saw who was beside me. The man placed a hand on my shoulder and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "This man didn't raise money. He raised people." My grandson's lips trembled. He took a step toward me, and then he did something I never expected. He hugged me, tight, in front of everyone, and whispered, "I'm sorry, Grandpa." But the real lesson, the one that stayed with him, came later that night. The waiting room didn't feel the same after that. People avoided their phones. Conversations were quieter. Even the TV had been muted. My grandson didn't let go of my hand as we sat back down. His fingers were shaking. "I didn't know," he said again, barely above a whisper. I squeezed his hand once. Most things worth knowing aren't loud. The nurse called a name from across the room. Life moved on around us, but something between us had changed forever. After the doctor finally came with good news, we stepped outside into the cool night air. The parking lot lights buzzed softly. My grandson walked beside me, slower than before. At the car, he stopped. "Grandpa," he said, "why didn't you ever upgrade your phone?" I smiled. "It still works." He nodded, then shook his head. "No, that's not what I mean." He took a deep breath. "You could have had better things, easier things." I leaned against the car door. "And missed the chance to help when it mattered?" He looked down, embarrassed. "I thought success looked different." "That's because real success doesn't show off, it shows up." We stood there quietly. Then he did something that surprised me again. He pulled out his brand new phone, unlocked it, and deleted something. Then he handed it to me. "Put your number in," he said, "and teach me how to live like that." My chest tightened. "I can't promise you'll be rich," I told him. "I don't want that," he said quickly. "I want to be respected like you." That night at home, I placed my old phone on the table and finally opened the message that had arrived earlier. It read, "The board approved the children's wing. In your name, no publicity." I smiled. From that day on, my grandson never joked about old things again. But the real change, it came months later, when he defended someone else the way no one had defended him before. It happened a few months later. I wasn't there when it started, but I heard the story from his school principal. She called me one afternoon, her voice unusually warm. "I thought you should know," she said. "Your grandson did something remarkable." That day, a new boy had joined his class, quiet, wearing the same faded shoes every day, still using an old phone that barely held a charge. The laughter came quickly, not from my grandson, but from others. One boy sneered, "What is that, a toy phone?" Another added, "Does your family even have Wi-Fi?" The room filled with chuckles. And then my grandson stood up. "Stop," he said. Not loud, not angry, just firm. The class went silent. He pointed at the old phone in the boy's hand. "You don't know what that phone has done, and you don't know what he has done." Someone laughed nervously. "What, is it magic now?" My grandson shook his head. "No, it's proof." Proof. That word stayed with me. The teacher watched as my grandson moved to the empty desk beside the boy and sat down. No hesitation, no looking back. At lunch, he shared his food. At recess, he walked with him. By the end of the day, the laughing had stopped. When my grandson came home that evening, he didn't brag. He didn't even mention it. I only knew because the principal told me. Later, as we sat on the balcony watching the sun fade, I asked him quietly, "Rough day?" He smiled. "Good day." He pulled out his phone and showed me something new, a contact name. Emergency only. My eyes softened. "You know that means responsibility, right?" He nodded. I know. We sat in silence, the kind that doesn't need words. That old phone still sits on my table. The screen is more cracked now, the battery weaker, but every time it vibrates, I remember something important. Legacies aren't built by what you show the world. They're built by what you quietly pass on. The call came on a rainy morning, the kind where the sky stays gray even after sunrise. I was at the table, wiping my old phone with a cloth, when it rang. The same number, the one labeled emergency only. I answered slowly. "Sir," a young voice said, nervous but determined, "you don't know me, but your grandson told me to call you." I sat down. He explained that the quiet boy from school, his friend now, had collapsed during practice. No parents nearby, no money in his bag, just fear. "They said someone needed to make a decision," the boy said. "Your grandson gave them your number." The hospital felt familiar when I arrived, too familiar, but this time I wasn't alone. My grandson met me at the entrance, rain-soaked, eyes steady. "I remembered what you said," he told me, "about showing up." Inside, the doctors moved fast. Questions came, forms followed. I signed where needed. Later, when the crisis passed, the doctor looked at me with curiosity. "You didn't hesitate." I shook my head. I was taught once. Outside the room, my grandson exhaled for the first time in hours. "You were right," he said, "about responsibility." I smiled. "And now you understand why I kept that phone." He nodded. "It's not old, it's ready." Weeks later, a small package arrived at our door. No return address. Inside was a simple card and a photo, two boys smiling in hospital gowns. On the back, one line was written, "Thank you for answering." My grandson taped the photo above his desk, and every time his phone rings now, he answers, because the lesson didn't end with me. It continued. If you want, I can also. Time has a gentle way of revealing truth. The hospital built a children's wing without announcements or banners, no names carved in stone, just a small plaque near the entrance that most people walk past without noticing. My grandson noticed it. He stood there one afternoon, reading the words slowly. He didn't say anything, he just took a photo and slipped his phone back into his pocket. On the drive home, he finally spoke. "Grandpa, do you ever regret not being known?" I thought for a moment. "Being known is loud," I said. "Being useful is enough." He nodded, like he was saving that answer for later. These days, he walks differently. He listens more. He doesn't laugh when things look old or broken. He asks questions instead. The phone on my table barely holds a charge now. The cracks have spread like thin lines on old hands, but it still rings when it matters. Sometimes it's a thank you. Sometimes it's a question. Sometimes it's just silence on the other end. Someone needing to know they're not alone. My grandson watches when I answer, and sometimes, before I even reach for it, he says, "I've got it, Grandpa." That's how I know the lesson stuck. Because one day, the phone will stop ringing for me. And when that day comes, it won't matter what I owned, what I showed, or what I was called. What will matter is this: someone else will answer. And that is how quiet lives leave the loudest echoes. If this story made you pause, if it reminded you of someone you love, please subscribe and share this story. Because quiet kindness is disappearing, and stories like this deserve to be remembered. Last week, my old phone finally went silent. No vibration, no light, no sound. The repair shop clerk shook his head. "It's done, sir. Nothing left to save." I nodded. I had expected that. At home, my grandson carefully placed the phone in a small wooden box. He didn't joke. He didn't rush. He treated it like something sacred. "Do you want me to transfer the messages?" he asked gently. I thought about it, then shook my head. No, I said. I already read the most important ones. That night, before bed, my grandson hesitated at my door. "Grandpa," he said, "what was the one message you never opened?" I smiled. "It didn't need opening," I told him, "because I lived it." He swallowed hard. The next morning, I woke to the sound of his phone ringing. He answered immediately. "Yes," he said, "I'm here." I closed my eyes and smiled, because the phone was never the legacy. The answer was. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more real stories that stay with you.